hit this.
I might get to do this to you. Sounds like the airline.
Good evening, everybody. The council meeting will commence at 6 p.m. This meeting will be live streamed on the internet and video recorded. The video recording of the meeting will be uploaded online within 48 hours of the conclusion of the meeting and be capable of repeated viewing. The voices and images of those participating in the meeting and in the gallery may be captured as part of this recording. Every care is taken to maintain the privacy of persons in the public gallery, with the camera focused on mayor, councillors and executive officers. However, persons in attendance at the public council meeting are advised that incidental capture of an image or sound of persons in the public gallery may occur. The confidential part of any council meeting will not be live streamed or video recorded.
Okay, good evening, everybody. It is a little strange and it feels like a very big show being put up here rather than our very intimate council chambers. But if I could please just begin with a statement of acknowledgement. We acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which we are meeting, and we pay our respects to their elders and to elders from other communities who may be here today. Those in the gallery, thank you for persevering with us as we undergo those major building works. At the moment, you actually can't get into our chamber, so for safety's sake, hence we are holding our meeting here. In fact, all of our briefing sessions have been elsewhere. So thank you for bearing with us while we undergo further changes to our city. Item 3 is apologies and requests for leave of absence. We have got Councillor Kat Bennett away, requested leave of absence at the last council meeting. Item 4 is declarations under Act, regulations, codes or local laws.
Persons are reminded that Council's meeting procedure local laws prohibits the use of audio, video or still image recording devices unless prior approval has been given by the chairperson or by Council.
Item 5 is declarations by any councillors of any conflict of interest. You've got one. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Item 8.4 in regard to community grants.
Any others? No. Quiet on that front tonight. Item 6 is confirmation of minutes of the previous meeting. The recommendation is there on page 3. Can I have someone move that, please? Thank you, Councillor Lowe. Thank you, Councillor Watson. Does anyone need to speak against that? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried. Item 7 is starting off with the delegates' report. 7.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm very pleased to be speaking on the benefits of attending the Smart Futures Conference in Melbourne recently. Being very new to council, I accepted advice that my attendance would be very beneficial in my decision-making processes for Wodonga, where quality information and research direction were all important. Many experts from around the world and Australia imparted volumes of information to me. I say now to everyone that I feel very fortunate that I was able to attend. New councillors can, from time to time, not see the big picture, and I'm not afraid to say that I'm not exempt. The conference opened my eyes to the types of sustainable urban futures that were possible. The futures options are meant for our decision makers to build a city that will benefit everyone who lives within its sphere of influence. Dynamics dealing with transport infrastructure and better roads, green space creation, more sustainable living that results in better health and fitness, even the way we communicate with each other. Were professionally presented in very powerful terms and were backed up with facts. If Wodonga is to mature into the wonderful city it's emerging to be, then its decision makers need to have every tool at their disposal. I can confidently say that a number of these tools have been handed to me, and I will use them wisely to benefit the city of Wodonga. Thank you.
No, Madam Mayor, I think Brian has summed it up very well. Thank you.
Other councillors? Councillor Lowe.
Probably, I didn't attend the conference, but I attended it the year before, Brian, and I, like you, walked into it not knowing how beneficial those types of conferences are to your thinking. They use Vancouver as an example of a leading city in this smart urbans, about the way they move people through the city and around the city, and how they actually close roads because roads weren't the be-all and end-all. I think one of the quotes from that conference was, their answer was for a long time to just add another lane to a highway to start treating the problems. And their metaphor for it was, it's just like adding another belt hole, or expanding your belt hole. Is it belt hole? Yeah, expanding your belt hole to treat obesity. So it was just a non-thing. So the things I picked up out of that conference was actually the way to move people about the city. And they were talking about moving people in buses and on bikes and things instead of cars, and saying people belong in cities, not cars. And that was one of the big things I picked up out of it. And the other one, that cities should be designed by doctors and health practitioners and the police force and those things, not city planners per se, because it's often the health practitioners will do things for health benefits for people. You know, designing parks in cities where you got your passive surveillance around, so facing your houses and everything towards those parks to provide that passive surveillance. Give somewhere for your kids to go and kick the footy, have a run, have a bike ride. So it was, yeah, I think it was a wonderful conference to attend, and congratulations. I hope you picked up as much as I did out of it.
Does anybody else want to have a comment? If you'll allow me, councillors, because I actually also attended. And I'd been, I think, on 2 other occasions over my 14 years to this particular conference, and I think every time I go I do learn something new. Some of those things that were put forward were reinforcements in and around the movement of people. But a couple of the really big points that I picked up was some of the changes that we should and can expect through Vic Roads. In part of their new strategy, it talks about a lot more about movement and place rather than just about movement of vehicles. There was another couple of really terrific examples where they cited a world example where Oklahoma used to be categorised as one of the fattest cities in the US. And they actually put a levy on all residents. And what they did was they took that levy very specifically and applied it to new pathways, new green spaces, new bike paths, new walking paths, new green spaces, and also activation of those spaces. And within, I think it was less than 4 years, it turned Oklahoma from being one of the fattest cities in the US to being one of the fittest cities in the US, simply by changing the public infrastructure and by the way that people were treated and encouraged to actually get out and embrace it and get out and get active. There was also some really terrific speakers in and around planning for women's safety. So when I look at that, for me, it wasn't just about women being safe. That means about everybody being safe in the community, but more specifically where certain segments of the community feel very vulnerable and the different ways that they're tackling those in terms of built form, in terms of public space and the public realm. You know, other discussions around, we talk about, you know, we've got free parking and like that's a really terrific thing. Well, in actual fact, there is no such thing as free parking because it actually costs us. It costs us to put it there, it costs us to maintain it, but it also costs us in terms of the health and the other opportunities that are foregone by having free parking. So there was a lot of discussion around what does that mean and if this is how much parking is costing us, and you see that more so in cities. larger cities than Wodonga, but, then is there other options that you could utilise that money for example, free access to some public transport? There was also then further discussion around denser vegetation and what densifying your vegetation does even to residential streets. So, there's statistical information in and around the monitoring of that and the impact of that, where a house value can actually be increased by up to 30% simply by improving the green infrastructure in streets, but also what it does to the city and how it encourages people to get out. It doesn't matter what kind of weather, whether it be hot or cold or everything in between. So it was really well done. It was incredibly well attended, to the point that I think on the first day we were sat against the wall, weren't we, acting CEO? But it was great, and they certainly had a wide variety of speakers. So congratulations, Councillor Mitchell, on attending your first conference, and it was a good one. Councillor Mitchell, is there anything you wanted to say to close? No? Councillors, the motion is there before us. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried. Item 7.2 is the North East Victorian Regional Waste Management Group Waste Forum Tour, of which Councillor Hall attended. Councillor Hall, would you like to move that?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Sorry. I need someone to second. Steady on. So I've got a mover. So are you happy to move that, Councillor Hall? Can I have someone second that? Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Off you go.
Okay, all right. On the 21st and the 22nd of March, our group of 25 representatives attended the 5th Local Government Waste Resource Recovery Tour, coordinated by the North East Waste and Resource Recovery Group. The representatives are a diverse group that include councillors, waste officers, local government forum representatives and North East Waste Recovery Group board and staff. The aim of these tours is to look at what is happening in the waste and recycling sector, see what other councils, businesses and organisations are doing, to seek out innovative opportunities to do things better, not only for our individual councils, but for the betterment of our region as well. Over the 2 big days, we visited 7 sites and had a presentation from the Metropolitan Waste Recovery Resource Group CEO Rob Miller. This has been my 3rd tour as a member of the committee, to which I am a member under council delegation. I find these tours very informative, and they provide a good opportunity to network with others and build stakeholder relationships within our region. The sites visited on the tour reaffirms the view that we should try and keep the processes locally or within our own region. That is segregation, aggregation of products, breaking them down and finding reuse options. An ambitious future direction would be ensuring that more than half our waste is processed in some form within our region. Sourcing out local businesses, organisations who can recycle or reuse our waste instead of sending it overseas, especially for plastics recovery and reuse options via a local processor. These tours are valuable not only for our council but for our local region as well. They help in providing us with current information and look for opportunities on dealing with our ever-growing population and the issues in dealing with our waste going forward. I find in going on these tours that there are some really good things happening within other councils and businesses in the areas of waste. We are continually looking for better ways on how to deal with our waste so we can minimise what we send to landfill. If you've ever had the opportunity to visit a landfill site like Suez at Hampton Park Resource Recovery Park, at Hampton Park in Melbourne, to which we visited on our tour, you will understand how important it is that we recover and recycle as much waste as possible. Suez at Hampton Park has around 13 landfill cells. 9 have been or are being rehabilitated and 2 are under construction. It incorporates a massive land area. The site caters for around 10 councils and is estimated to be full and eventually closed in around 2025, 27, depending on the landfill waste that is received over the coming years. I note they recycle and process as much waste as they can, And upon visiting to the site, it becomes very apparent that we cannot continue to send our waste to landfill sites like Hampton Park on the scale that we're doing present going forward. It's not only costly in terms of the need for the vast areas of land space and to our environment, but it's also costly for councils to collect and process. These costs are then reflected and costs passed back on to our rates. We need to look for better options in dealing with our waste, and it is very important that we keep in touch with new and innovative best practices in the waste management area as a council. These tours play a role in doing this. Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to thank Councillor Hall for being our I suppose, our mentor for waste and taking the message and taking up the message. But after visiting the Albury landfill facility, which is, very impressive, over the years, but we still got a long way to go. And I think we need to get to world best practice, and because the landfill in Albury isn't everlasting, and so we've got to get better at everything and make sure industry follows trend too.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Councillor Hall, for attending that. It is a pretty interesting sector right now. I think one of the most disappointing things that I keep seeing is that there's lack or an absolute void of really good, strong policy and thinking from the other levels of government. And that's where it's really going to need to come from. But going out and exploring what other people are doing, and we should be looking at the worldwide examples because there's so many other places that do it really well. And we need to be, looking at harnessing those. So I know that we've still got a bit of work to do on our waste strategy after our visit, particularly to Albury, so that we're thinking about the best opportunities forward for our region, taking up those world-class examples. So thank you for attending and thank you for your good description tonight. Did you need anything to close? No? Thank you, councillors. Motion is there before us. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried. Item 8.1 is the Rating Strategy Review 2019. The recommendation to adopt is there on page 29. Can I have someone move that recommendation? Yep, thank you, Councillor Hall. Others? Seconder? Thank you, all off the mark tonight. Thank you, Councillor Lowe. Councillor Hall.
Yes, as being on the rating strategy strategy group, we did put a lot of work into it. We spoke about this last council, I think it was, meeting. This was to go out for community feedback and has come back to us to be adopted. Thank you.
No other comments? Thank you. Councillors, motion is there before us. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried. Item 8.2 is that, sorry, I've got a real glare on my paperwork here, is the March 2019 Quarterly Monthly Finance Report. The recommendation is there on page 47 to approve this report. Can I have someone move that, please? Thank you, Councillor Watson. Thank you, Councillor Lowe. Councillor Watson.
Madam Mayor, just to look, standard statistician would love these figures. There's a lot of involvement, a lot of information there, but it also just shows what we've done in the last quarter, and congratulate Officer Norell to putting all this report together.
Thank you. Yes. Councillor Watson, there is an awful lot, Officer Norell, there is a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes. This actually marches us swiftly towards understanding our final end-of-year wash-up numbers. As always, as we move madly into that last quarter of the year where we see a lot of the capital works being completed and or us running around to make sure that we receive those invoices as is appropriate. But what it again shows me is that we're in a really strong financial position and really strong financial position to move into our budgetary process, which is very much underway and is at the next meeting going up for a draft for review for the community. So, councillors, Councillor Watson, did you have anything further to add? No. Councillors, motion's there before us. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion's carried. Item 8.3 is the Birallee Park Indoor Cricket Training Facility Project Single Contractors Works Package. Long report there, councillors. And the recommendation is there on page 56. Thank you, Councillor Watson. Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Watson.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. This has been a long process, and it's actually, we took it back to be evaluated again because on the first tender, it just came back and it wasn't acceptable to us or to the council. And it's gone back out and the recommendations before you there. I'd just like to say that this is really very much a partnership with Sporting Recreation Victoria, Cricket New South Wales, Albury City Council and our City Council. And we do have a shortfall, and you know, look, it is a concern that we do have a shortfall, but it is a positive in the sense that we have savings that we can use to spend on that of the order of $211,000. So this is a great thing for our community and a great thing for cricket and the young, well, young and old, but it gives it a hub and it gives a place of purpose for cricket in the northeast. So we need to get this moving so it's ready for the next cricket season, and I put the motion forward.
Councillor Mitchell.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. The recommendation states that Southern Cross developers be accepted as the successful tenderer. Southern Cross were one of two that actually submitted a tender that was complete, that would complete the whole project by the one company, and whereas a lot of the other tenders were piecemeal, where they tendered for lots of individual items, and logistically it would have been extremely difficult to control a whole large group of tenderers rather than just the one. So I'm pleased that Southern Cross were the successful.
Thank you. Any other councillors wish to comment? Councillor Lowe?
I think it's we've done a couple of things here. It's a regional facility, yes, but it went out to tender, and Councillor Watson, I echo your thoughts, it wasn't right, so we went back to tender in two different formats. One was those individual line items and individual quotations to see if we could get a cheaper price. But in the end, Southern Cross as a whole was cheaper than the other versions. It is $200,000 above initial budget, but the regional impact for this, it will stop our elite cricketers, both our boys and girls, from going to Melbourne or other bigger cities to try to gain the experience. But not only will we not lose that talent and we can help their development moving forward, we'll also gain other cricketers from the city, from regionally. So this is not just about Wodonga, and it's not just about now. This is for the next 20 years of development for cricket, both men's and ladies. And I think this, and we can even turn this into a multi-purpose venue. You know, we can have a chat with the cricket guys and go, you know, when it's not news, what else can our community use that same venue for? I think it's a chance not to be missed, and I'll be voting in favour of this recommendation tonight.
Good, thanks, Councillor Lowe. Other councillors? Councillor Milton, do you have anything? No? No? Yeah, Councillor Hall.
Just a quick comment. No one ever really likes things when they're a bit more expensive than what's budgeted for. I do understand, though, from time to time you have your wins and, you know, things come under, and then at other times they do go over. But I do feel that this is an important development that we go forward with, and so I will be supporting it tonight.
Yep. Councillor Mitchell, did you have anything? No? Councillors, if you just allow me, I think there's a couple of things I'd like to say. When we first did the costing on this, it was actually about good 4 years ago, because this is how long we've been developing up the project. So in some respects, I'm not surprised to see a slight difference. I think that I would still like to commit that this, while not holding up the process, I think we still need to work with all of our partners to look at them to chip into this amount, and we'll continue to do that as we continue to progress. But the other component I think to really reflect on here is this is about being fully aware of what things are going to cost us, rather than waiting for something to start and then become aware of it, where you're scrabbling around to then try and make ends meet. So, well, yes, it's more than we projected initially. We actually know what we're in for. And then again, Councillor Lowe, you said it, this is more than just a sporting facility. This is an economic driver. This is a talent developer. This is about health and social outcomes. So it's much broader. And to have all of the different partners in place, which is Cricket Australia, Cricket New South Wales, Cricket Victoria, Albury, us, and the Victorian government, is a pretty big feat to actually get all of those people in one room and actually agreeing on something. But there's also somebody sitting in here in our gallery tonight, and I'd just like to congratulate Michael Erkeljack and the Cricket Albury Wodonga Club on all of the work that has been done, because this has been many years in the making, and it is going to be an absolute legacy that is being left. So, Michael, if you would, through you, please pass back to all of the Albury Wodonga Cricket Club, thank you for all your tireless work, and to the whole club for really standing up and making sure that we plan for our future, for not only our kids, but also the adults getting out and being active. So back to Councillor Watson for any close.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to conclude this is probably the first big spend we've done on sport in both City of Wodonga and City of Albury for some time, and
Probably just the City of Wodonga, I'd suggest.
City of Wodonga, but for the City of Wodonga, Birallee, it's another part of the asset that we're putting into that sporting precinct, and it all goes well for if this is one of our major regional hubs for Barrandoota Fields then to kick off in the future.
Yep, great, thank you. Councillors, the motion is there before us. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried. You have your cricket hub underway, Michael. 8.4 is the Community Impact Grants, Community Impact Partnership Grants, February 2019. Now, Councillor Mildren, you've got a conflict? Yep, do you want to say that, and then I'm going to hand to Councillor Lowe because he's got a correction.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've got an indirect conflict because I've got an involvement with several community groups connected with applications for funding in this program.
Super, thank you. It's a long walk out. I'm going to hand to you first, Councillor Lowe. Now, councillors, before I call for someone to move either the suggested recommendation or an alternate, Councillor Lowe spotted an incorrect item in the tabled papers. Councillor Lowe, did you want to just inform your fellow councillors of that?
Yeah, I'll draw your attention to page 56 of the tabled papers, guys. There was a grant there with a panel recommendation of yes where it should be no. It's Wodonga Hockey Club
Yep.
asking for money around
Yep.
Doing some research.
Super, thank you, yep. So councillors, that change has been discussed. So councillors, if we make that a no and a 0 there in the amount recommended, so if that's the case, Councillor Lowe, are you happy with item 8.4 to move the, it's on the loose leaf paper, to move that motion? Yep.
Do I just, seeking clarity, do I have to add the third dot point that that's no, or we're happy to make the change in the tabled papers? Councillors,
Happy to make the change in the tabled papers? Excluding item for the Wodonga Hockey Club on page 56 of the tabled papers. Yep.
Just had the grant number.
Yep, just the grant number, which is 00163. So the community impact grants be approved in accordance with the recommendations of the assessment panel, excluding applicant 00163. And then item 2 still stands. Is that what you're moving, Councillor Lowe?
That's what I'll move, and probably for the benefit of the people at home, I might actually read that.
Good, okay.
From 1 to 2. So,
Yep.
community impact grants and community impact partnership grants, Feb 2019 round. That 1, the community impact grants be approved in accordance with the recommendations of the assessment panel, excluding grant number 00163, and dot point 2, the community partnership grants be approved in accordance with the recommendations of the assessment.
Fantastic, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Mitchell, to second it. Did you want to speak to these, Councillor Lowe?
Primarily, these grants are to give community a hand. There's people out there in our community, and I'll use the David Wodonga Park group that have been successful in the application tonight, that do hundreds of hours of in-kind work for our community and looking after, in this particular case, parks and stuff. And they've asked for a grant tonight to help with their main entrance and stuff of this particular park. We've got Wodonga Raiders and St John's both asking for some help with some funding around providing programs in schools and kindergartens, and Raiders in particular about giving their personnel the ability to apply first aid if needed. And these are the sort of things that we need around our schools and also our sporting groups. I think Trudewan Road Neighbourhood House were asking for a defibrillator. Yeah, I'll go again on that one. So it's just about helping out our community and giving access to money where it's purely voluntary basis. So we're just trying to give a helping hand. Thank you.
Other councillors, Councillor Mitchell.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. The council assessment panel has been very thorough in selecting deserving community projects, and I wholeheartedly second this motion because of that fact. Thank you.
Good on you. Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Any other comments, councillors? Councillor Watson.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. We raised rates from the ratepayers of the City of Wodonga, and this is one really nice way, I believe, we give back to our community and our city through all the different organisations that require some support, some help, and to keep our city moving forward. So I endorse all the grants that have been approved, if it gets through tonight on the vote, and it just helps our community go forward.
Councillor Hall, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, I will be supporting these grants tonight. It is important that we, a lot of it's not large sums of money. Some of them, they're not large sums of money, and I think we can afford to, as John said, give back and help out some of the, many of the organisations that are voluntary or just putting, that are giving back to the community, and I think it's important that we do have this policy in there.
Thank you. Councillors, I think there's no doubt about it. Every one of the applications has been incredibly varied, and when we see that variation through our community, what we end up with is a better community. And the other component to think about with this is this money goes a really long way. In fact, I actually challenge all of you councillors to make sure that we get out to at least most, if not all of those organisations over the next 12 months and see what this money does, because how they make it, or as far as they can make it go right throughout the community, and what they do is just incredible. And the reality is our community wouldn't be what it is if we didn't support these types of organisations and they weren't there. And not only that, we could not, our budget would not fund the work that they do that makes our community safer, better, healthier, and in some instances even more financially sustainable. But they ask for very little money and it goes a really long way. Councillor Lowe, did you have anything for close?
Probably just pick up on your point about making it more financially sustainable. I think that David Wodonga Park, it's a bottom park, is a prime example. You've got the community manpower behind that are doing this all in kind. So if we had to pay our Parks and Rec team to go in and do the same amount of work they do, it'd be a far more cost on community than what they've asked for tonight. That's for sure. And it's also, it's not like we're giving out money willy-nilly. There's certain criteria, as Councillor Watson said, that they've got to pass to be able to access these grants. And I think year to date is $29,900 out of our $100,000 budget that we've allocated to these grants. So we've still got 70,000 available in the next round. If is there any community out there that would like to apply?
Great, thank you. Councillors, motion is there before us. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried. We'll just wait for Councillor Mildren to enter. Thank you. Welcome back, Councillor Mildren. Item 8.5 is donation and sponsorship requests. There is a recommendation from officers on page 65. Do I have a councillor who would like to move that or put an alternate motion? Thank you, Councillor Lowe. Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Lowe.
Probably do the same again, Madam Mayor, and read the recommendation for the benefit of the community at home. That a donation of $3,000 be approved for Restart Albury Wodonga, and a sponsorship of $1,500 be approved for Go Local Media Group.
Great, thank you. Did you want to talk to that, please? Yep, you will. So, Councillor Watson, did you want to speak to that?
Madam Mayor, very much on the same comments I made on the previous agenda item, is that once again, giving back to our community for the opportunity of them to go ahead with their projects.
Great, thank you. Other councillors? Councillor Hall, Councillor Mitchell, no? Yep.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a reservation about the second component, not because it's not a good event, not because it's not going to do good things for the community, but I just don't feel it's appropriate for ratepayers' money to be sponsorship for private companies when they're undertaking private activities. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Lowe, back to you.
I probably understand where Councillor Mildren's coming from, but I look at it as a sponsorship on an event or for event attraction, and anything that will bring benefit to our community on a fiscal side through accommodation, and also raising the profile of Wodonga. This is a magazine that sits in every Qantas lounge in Australia, and it's local, and I think we should be really getting behind and supporting a magazine like this to broaden our profile. I find this an investment into branding, if anything, and if we can partner with Go Local magazine, which is a leading magazine, not just locally but nationally, and they're aiming to put on a massive event. I think our sponsorship is $1,500 and the event is $100,000 to put this event on. So in the whole scheme of things, I think the benefit and return on investment, I'll call it, back to our community far outweigh the $1,500. And also Restart, touching on them, that they were a group that probably started out primarily on helping foster girls transition out of foster care and into adulthood, I'll call it, and they've developed into helping out domestic violence victims and helping people escape from the situations that they're in. They basically provide essential items to these groups in need. So I'm very much a supporter of both these tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, the motion is there before us. All those in favour? Against? Motion is carried. Okay, item 8.6 is the draft Wodonga Activity Centre Hierarchy Strategy. There's a recommendation by officers on page 70. Do I have a councillor want to move that or move an alternate? Thank you, Councillor Mildren. Thanks, Councillor Watson. Councillor Mildren.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There's been quite a bit of work done on this hierarchy strategy. There's some aspects of it that have had quite rigorous discussion by councillors through the briefing process to get to the point where we've reached today. But overall, this is quite a reasonable document. It establishes a structure in the way we distribute our retail areas across the city, both recognising what exists today and what goes into the future. And I think, by and large, this document is reasonably good at what it purports to do. And there's a couple of things in there that the community might want to have a look at, but by and large, I think it does what it purports to do, and I commend it for exhibition and public comment.
Great, thank you. Councillor Watson.
Madam Mayor, once again, a lot of statistics, and I'm glad that the report's a little bit larger in print from when we had it as a draft. But yes, it's going out for public consultation, and I look forward to the feedback, and I hope a lot of people pick it up.
Thank you. Any other councillors? No. Councillors, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried. Item 8.7 is planning for the Wodonga Hills. The Wodonga Hills Advisory Group interim report. I believe Councillor Mitchell has an alternate motion. Councillor Mitchell.
I do, thank you, Madam Mayor. The motion that everyone has in front of them has 3 sections to it. I would like to change and add a 4th. My motion will read that the Wodonga Hills Advisory Group interim report of April 2019 be received.
Yep.
That this report be circulated to all nominated stakeholder agencies of the Wodonga Hills Advisory Group for 21 days.
Yep.
The advisory group call an additional meeting comprising a quorum to vote on ratification of the report.
Yep.
And that the advisory group provide an update report to council at our general June meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Is there somebody to second that motion? Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Mitchell, floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The committee for the Wodonga Hills Advisory Group consisted of 9 committee members, and those 9 committee members signed application and declaration forms that they were going to partake in the determinations for the Wodonga Hills for a number of reasons. A number of committee people were unable to participate. The committee's charter specifically states that a quorum of 6 members to be involved for the decision-making process to take place, and out of the 5 meetings that were held, only 2 of those initial meetings had a quorum of 6 or more. So I would like the report to go back to the committee, and as I moved in that motion, to be reviewed. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Watson.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I thank Councillor Mitchell for putting up a motion that I think shows that we're not in a rush to get this thing through, because we want to make sure every box is ticked. I congratulate the community members, because I don't think they were the absentee people at some of these meetings, and I do really thank it is, because it was a very onerous job going through all the Hilltop advisory reports, and I think what Councillor Mitchell has done is to give us a little bit more time, a bit more breathing space, and get some real feedback from some of our authorities that need to just put their ink on the paper. So, yeah, thank you very much for putting up the motion, Councillor Mitchell.
Other councillors. Councillor Mildred. Of course.
Madam Mayor, question to the mover and seconder. Are you cognisant of the fact that the item 2 of this report doesn't give the community an opportunity to have input to the interim report? Only those organisations that form part of the advisory group?
Yes, I am. and I've worded it that way specifically.
Yep, got your answer. You want to have comment? Go for it.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In that case, I can't support this recommendation because largely I believe everything that we do with this sort of thing should be going out and having full public opportunity for comment. The way this is structured, the way this motion is structured, it's a very narrow group of people, and in fact, effectively the same people that have been the advisory group, albeit some of those haven't turned up to the meetings, are going to have the say on what goes from here. When I believe that what we should be doing is going out to full public comment on the hierarchy and structure of the priorities, and just see what the community's views are. I recognise that each and every member of this advisory group have done an extraordinarily good job, each and every community member. I recognise also that the DELP people only turned up on a very limited number of occasions, and I understand the CFA representatives didn't turn up at all. It's disappointing that that's how it's worked, but I think it's time that we put this out to the community and got full feedback from it, and get some indication of the community's priorities based on the strategy that we've adopted. On the other matter that's raised in this report, on page 72, it talks about council taking over Crown land. I don't support the council taking over Crown land in any form in those regards. So in terms of the report being received, yes, we receive it, but I don't support that component of the report. And in terms of reducing the quorum of the members to advisory group meetings, I don't support the reduction in the quorum either.
Thank
so
you.
Basically from that, I can't support this motion. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thanks.
Reply?
No, you've spoken to this already? Yep.
Yeah, but
You got a question? You got a question? Councillor Watson? Councillor Hall, did you want to have comment? And I'll come to you.
Okay, I have some issues with the validity of this report presented to councillors. Noted that only, less than 50, so I've written 50% of the advisory group meetings had enough members at the meeting to hold a quorum. DELP, who were an invited member, only had representation at the meeting on 2 occasions. CFA, who were also invited member, never attended any of the meetings, even after many requests, I believe. To not have enough members for a quorum 50% of the time does, in my view, question the validity of this report, and then, in my view, questions the validity of the current committee going forward. I have lack of confidence in it going forward.
Thank you. Councillor Lowe?
Question first of all, and I'm not sure who to direct it to, so I'll direct it towards the mover, and I've got 2 questions. One is, with a quorum, it only matters if there's a decision being made. So I'm assuming, so my question is, if there's no decisions being made at any of these meetings, does it matter if there's a quorum or not?
In my opinion, Councillor Lowe, anything that transpires at a meeting where the information is documented and handed on to another authority is a decision. And a quorum, as set out in their original declaration back in February 2017, I think it was, stated that they have a quorum of 6 members out of a total of 9. So that is stipulated in their own records that that they needed to have a quorum, and that wasn't evident in 70% of their meetings.
Yep. Good. Next question or comment, Councillor Lowe? Yep, go for it. Turn your button on.
Just in regards to the motion being moved, would you consider having an additional, so where it says to all nominated stakeholders and community?
Can I draw you back to the schedule? Councillor Mitchell, do you want to respond?
To that question?
Yep. Can you please turn your microphone on?
Yeah,
Thanks.
sorry.
You're right.
I really don't have a problem with adding those words. I do tend to think, though, that by adding those words, we're going to open Pandora's box, and that the timing that we have in mind to finalise this could be blown out by, you know, not months but years. So that was the reasoning behind, you know, keeping it to the stakeholders rather than all and sundry.
Can I just ask the acting CEO? So, through the responsibilities of the advisory group, my understanding is that even though we're receiving, so we're not adopting, we're receiving the information, so that's for consideration. We're receiving the prioritisation of the actions that were already put in the strategy and already adopted. And my question is that as we go forward and we work through the budgetary process, there'll be, in many respects, a lot of detailed work that needs to occur, in which case that's the part that we would be speaking to the community about, because you'd be fine-tuning what's actually happening, whether it's signage, whether it's all the different components. So that's still yet to come, isn't it?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Mayor. In the advisory held council's responsibility to the advisory group, it does talk about the council can use the information that's provided by the advisory committee to then go out and further consult with the community on any of those priorities or even on the report itself. So there is the scope then, once council receives the further report in June, council can then go out and consult with the community around those particular priorities.
Yep. Does that answer your question? Councillor Logue, did you want to have any other comment? No? Can I just make a couple of comments? First of all, thank you, Councillor Mitchell, because I think what you're endeavouring to do is actually tidy up the meeting procedure that has occurred, and I think that's really important to really make sure that that process is robust. I would like to actually thank the committee for their work. They worked some really big hours to make this happen. I think what's very disappointing is when you have paid authorities that are actually supposed to be sitting at the table and they don't bother to turn up, despite being contacted multiple times. I think what we've also got to remember is that this isn't determining the strategy. That's actually already been done. This was actually about making some suggested priorities to us. We've still got to go through a whole budgetary process where we go through each of those items, we cost them, we actually understand the implications, we need to do further work around some detail about from where signage literally goes to what it looks like, to how we do that, whether it's online, whether it's you know, a stake in the ground with signage on it, what all those things look like. So there's actually quite a bit of work to still go. This helps us determine the priority that we will see those items fall out. But like I said, councillors, we've got a lot of work to go still ahead of us, and this doesn't cease here. So I think making sure that we note that, you know, item 1 that's being put on the table here by Councillor Mitchell is to receive it. It's not to adopt it. This is to receive it. So it's actually part of the information that we need to work through as we go through the next budgetary process. And so ultimately, we've got many steps to continue with, and ultimately it will come back to councillors to sign off where we go from here and to continue that work with the community, because it doesn't stop. And this document will never stop. So, Councillor Mitchell, back to you for any close.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I too would also like to thank the active participants of the committee. I think they did a very, very good job. And as was said, it's crossing the T's and dotting the I's and formalising it so that it doesn't present future problems.
Thanks, Councillor Mitchell. Councillors, motion is there before us. That's those 4 points that Councillor Mitchell put that you all have in front of you. All those in favour? Against? Motion's carried. Certainly. So item 8.7 is planning for the Wodonga Hills Advisory Group interim report. The motion that's on the table is item 1, that the Wodonga Hills Advisory Group interim report of April 2019 be received. 2, that the report be circulated to all nominated stakeholder agencies of the Wodonga Hills Advisory Group for 21 days. 3, that the advisory group can call an additional call an additional meeting comprising of a quorum to vote on ratification of the report. Item 4, that the advisory group provide an updated report to the council at the June meeting. Councillors, all those in favour? Councillor Mitchell, Councillor Watson, Councillor Speedy, Councillor Lowe, against, Councillor Hall and Councillor Mildren. Item 9.1 is the report from the VEC on the filling of the extraordinary vacancy. Councillor Mitchell, you probably don't want to move that. Somebody want to move that report? Thank you, Councillor Watson. Thank you, Councillor Mildren. Councillor Watson, any comment?
It is a great pleasure to have Councillor Mitchell on board.
It is indeed. Other councillors? No. Councillors, the report is there. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried. Item 10.1 is the planning report for March. The recommendation is on page 80. It's for information only. Was there any questions or comments? Nope. Item 10.2 is the building report for March 2019. Again, for information only. Any question or comments? I think worthy of note, councillors, there's quite a few large items on there in the millions of dollars or just shy of the millions of dollars, including childcare centres, which is fantastic because we have been short, so having some extras is terrific. Item 10.3 is the competitive services report for March. Again, for information only on page 86. Is there any questions or comments? Nope. 10.4 is Assemblies of Councillors. And for information only, Councillor Hall, you pulled up that there was on page 89 just a note to make that Councillor Bennett was absent.
Yep, I just noted that it wasn't listed that Councillor Kat Bennett was an apology. Yep. On the 1st of April.
Yep, we'll make sure that's corrected for the minutes. Thank you very much for that pickup. Item 10.5 is the decisions register. Again, for information only. 11 is notice of motion, which is none. Petition is none. Urgent business, there is none. And question time, there is one question. CEO, did you want to read that out?
Yes. The question is from Michelle Cowan, and I acknowledge Michelle in the audience tonight. Her question is in 2 parts. Today, the Acting CEO replied to my request for a copy of the Wodonga Hills Advisory Group to be tabled at this meeting and advised that the document would be made publicly available after the meeting and community members could provide comment through the appropriate channels after the meeting. Can the Acting CEO please advise what the appropriate channels are after a decision is made? Yes, Michelle, so those appropriate channels would be by phone, letter, email. You can also arrange meetings with your elected councillors and or with the CEO to provide that feedback. The second part of the question is, the Wodonga Hills Advisory Group recommends that where possible, councils seek to take over management of all Crown land parcels within the Hill precinct. Can the council detail what budgetary considerations have been made for this substantial responsibility and how you have consulted ratepayers about this significant cost impos? I would like to just reiterate what Madam Mayor said tonight, in that there has been no decision made, no consideration of this issue, because it is one of those priority items that have been presented to Council from the Wodonga Hills Advisory Committee. And so once that report comes back to Council, and as the Mayor said, there are lots of conversations and discussions and decisions to be made by the Council, and that will be one of those. Thank you.
Thank you. No other questions?
No.
Nope. Okay, it leaves me to just close the meeting so that we can actually go to our YAS awards. But before I close tonight's meeting, can I please say a huge thank you to our executive staff for stepping up while we have been minus a CEO, but we have had fantastic representation. So thank you, Leon, for the work that you did through January, through the 46 degrees while Deb was away. Deb, thank you so much for the work that you've done over the last couple of months. Deb has had baptism by fire. I've dragged around Melbourne and all sorts of things to all sorts of meetings, and she's absolutely flown with it. So, Deb, thank you, but thank you genuinely to the whole team because you've all had to step up. Kelly, we've got you sitting at the table rather than sitting over there behind the scenes. And Narelle, every single person has absolutely taken on extra workload, etc., and made sure that we've had continuation of business and even enabled us to continue working through budget processes and etc. So no slowdown. And when you look at the number of projects that we have got going on around the city, has been no small feat. So thank you so much for your work. And we will be welcoming to the table our new CEO, Mark Dixon, next month. So thank you very much. And that just leaves me to close tonight's meeting and to ensure that we welcome people in May 13th, and it will be back in here again while our building is still under some major construction. And I think we've got our young people here now. Awesome. So if I could please close the meeting so that we can turn off live streaming so that we can congratulate our April